Morena tātou. Welcome everybody. Welcome to our June council meeting. And before we get underway this morning, I'd just like to note that this is Ross's last meeting with us. After many, many years of serving local government in New Zealand, he's going to browner pastures and going to Australia. So Ross, on behalf of us all here around the table, thank you so much for the contribution you've made to our council. You've been an absolute pleasure to work with alongside your contribution, and I've seen it in today's agenda is really meaningful and powerful. So thank you so much. And please report back to us how it's going. And one would say somewhat flippantly, but there will always be a door open for you should you wish to come back to Ōtorohanga District Council.
It might need to.
That's right. Right, okay. Can we please move on to our opening karakia, please?
Mā te whakapono, mā te tumanako, mā te titiro, mā te whakarono, mā te mahitahi, mā te manawanui, mā te aronga, ka taia e tātou.
Thank you, everybody, for that. We do have an apology for lateness from Councillor Willison. I'd like to move that his apology be accepted. Second, Councillor Tamaki, all in favour? Thank you. Public forum, there's nobody in the public forum this month. Late items, I do not believe there's any late items in the agenda. And I'll go back to that because I've already missed my words of wisdom, which I tend to do for everybody else, and even I'm onto it this morning. A leader takes people where they want to go. A great leader takes people where they don't want to go, but ought to be. Is there any councillors that need to declare a conflict of interest in today's meeting? All right, thank you. Moving on to the confirmation of minutes dated 27th of May and 10th of June. I'll move those. Do we have a second of those? Secondly, Councillor Prendergast. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you. Is there any matters arising from those minutes? No, we'll move on to the receipt of minutes of the Kawhia Community Board and Ōtorohanga Community Board on the 5th and 9th of June. Do I have a mover and a seconder for those, please? With Councillor Dow, second to Councillor Christensen. All in favour? Carried. Thank you. My verbal report, obviously over the last couple of months, like the last couple of years, there's been a number of, I've had 2 Waikato Water Done Well hui. We had risk and assurance on the 9th of this month. I went to the opening of Waikeria Prison on the 5th of this month. Field days opening on the 11th. Hamilton Airport, actually two visits out there. One of them was a visit around the new international terminal and arrivals. And you can see where the money goes, and it's a huge commitment out there. When I look at the immigration officers that are needed, actually it's the police requirement is the big one, because they need to put everybody through security now that the jets are coming in there, and the police have to be there for each one of those visits. And now the Jetsstars come on board, and in New Zealand coming on board later on, the police have to pretty much have a full-time presence out there. No additional staff, but obviously quite a draw-on resource. And went to the, as I said, the airport for the Jetstar arrival or opening. Any questions on anything I've been up to? No, thank you. Move on. We would ordinarily be going on to our first agenda item, but I'm going to delay that until we have a full representation of council. So we'll move on to item, and sorry, just on that note, we're expecting Councillor Willison at about 10:30. So we'll move on to item 248, Kawhia Community Hall Hire Charges. I presume, without looking, I presume that's you, Grant.
Yeah.
And that is on page 66, councillors. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Your Worship. So this report is to adopt fees and charges for the Kapia Community Centre that were deferred as it went back to the Kapia Community Board. Council will recall we adopted all the balance of our fees and charges at the last meeting. The board wanted to do some further work on the possibility of waiving charges for particular community groups, and for council to give them delegated authority from 1 July next year to do that. So happy to take any questions.
Councillors, any questions? Quite straightforward. Yeah, it's good to see the recommendations from the Kawhia Community Board coming forward in terms of waiving those fees for the hall hire, which is really cool. Just one recommendation. Oh my God. Okay, I take that all the councillors have read the staff recommendation. So I will take that, and that is adopting the fees and charges of the Kawhia Community Centre for inclusion in the 25-26 annual plan, and then obviously the components within B and C. Do we have a mover and a seconder for those? We have Councillor Jeffries, second to Councillor Hughes. All in favour? Carried. Thanks, Graham. Moving on to item 249 on page 73, and that there's recommendation on Ōtorohanga community metered water charges. Welcome, Brendan.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so this report is just a recommendation from the community board, similar to the last one. This is from the Ōtorohanga Community Board on what their charges should be for the next financial year. I'll take it as read and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brendan. Actually, the same goes again with the recommendation of the community board coming forth to the council and the rationale in supporting that. Once again, a good report. Thank you. Any discussion on that? Yeah, Councillor.
Just one question. Does Kawhia Community Board, do they do it separate? Like, they're not.
So Kawhia's water is charged through their rates. So that's part of the rates resolution that we're setting. I mean, these are in the rates resolution as well, but yeah, Kawhia doesn't do volumetric charging. So there's just set as a flat charge across everyone through the rates.
Sweet. No, everyone's got to use a cube more.
Yeah.
Every user's got to use a cube more to make up the 40K. So tell people to use their water.
Thank you. Okay, we have a staff recommendation before us that the Ōtorohanga District Council adopts a recommendation from the Ōtorohanga Community Board that the 25-26 metered water rates be set at A, $220 per connection per annum, GST exclusive, and B, $2 per cubic metre of water, GST exclusive. Do I have a mover and a second for that, please? Moved Councillor Tamaki, second Councillor Dow. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you, Brendan.
Thank you.
Graham. Moving on to item 250 on page 77, adoption of annual plan 25-26. Welcome, Nadia.
Ngā mihi mahana kia koe, te kromatua me ngā kaikaunihira. Today we represent the final draft of the 25-26 annual plan for adoption. I would like to thank Anne and Brendan and my GM colleagues for their contribution to the process and the draft that is before you. The annual plan 25-26 represents year 2 of the long-term plan. As elected members are aware, staff have taken council through a series of publicly open workshops in the development of this plan. The long-term plan 24-34 signalled an overall average rates increase for year 2 of 9.76%. Where we land today is 10.16. That's a difference of 0.4%. This remains within our thresholds of council's financial strategy. There are several key drivers in this year 2 increase, many of which were already signalled in the long-term plan, and those include $45,000 for the local election, which is in October, noting that I have that wrong in the annual plan, $100,000 for increased asset maintenance and consent costs associated with the Kawhia and Aotea seawalls, $50,000 for the delivery of the climate change response plan. This is moving from a one-off sustainable fund this year to a rates funded approach. $50,000 to commence preparation on the next long-term plan that will take effect in the last half of the coming year. Inflationary adjustments across materials, wages, services and insurance, and increased depreciation costs to catch up on the levers that we pulled to keep this current year's rates lower. So next year reflects the move from 50% to 75% as we start to build that back. There are a small number of new costs that have arisen since we adopted the long-term plan, and those have also been incorporated into what is before you. And they include the $58,000 operational funding for the Ōtorohanga Historical Society, remembering that we are repurposing $35,000 that was budgeted for Waikato, for Creative Waikato. So essentially that's an increase of 23, sorry. $15,000 for the legislatively required Māori ward referendum, which we didn't know we had to do when adopting the long-term plan. And lastly, the $40,000 in levies for Taumata Arawai and the Commerce Commission, which are linked to the government's local water done well reform. So the remaining changes in 5.3 of the report have not contributed to the rates increase for next year. They're just there as notes. I've noted some editorial changes, which I will go through just for you now. So already mentioned, we need to change the election month within the annual plan that currently says September to October. We'll change the overall rate percentage in the table that's on page 8 of the annual plan or 89 of the agenda, from 10.12 to 10.16. And we'll remove a heading utility charges for non-rateable properties from page 80 of the annual plan. The 25-26 annual plan reflects Council's long-term plan theme of steady as we go, while ensuring we meet current needs, invest in the future, and respond to legislative and community expectations. With that, I'm happy to take any questions of the report or the annual plan.
Thanks, Nadia. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Dow.
I'm just trying to find it there, but the maths doesn't always add up. So does it round up or round down? Like, hang on, see if I can find a page. Talking about. So if you get to say page 97 of the table, the operating surplus or deficit is it says that the variance is the 105,000. But if you look at the, I'm assuming you take the 403 and minus it off the 509, which is actually 106. And that's in quite a lot of them. There's like 1,000.
Yeah, it's because of rounding issues. So when you round down to thousands, you will get things that if you and pure maths wouldn't work, but do actually work if you expand it out to full numbers. And yeah, it's just the way the tables.
Yeah, because sometimes it's up, sometimes it's
down.
down.
Yeah, it depends on where you are and then rounding to different numbers. You get subtracting from each other.
And the only other question I had was somewhere, I'm just trying to find it there, that said we was doing the Hupatia reserve development. I thought we hadn't actually ticked off the reserve management plans as such. We were still waiting to do the domain and the island reserve, and that was all part of that same package for reserves planning. So I wasn't sure. I couldn't find a resolution to say that we will all go with the Hupatia reserve plan. So.
What page are you on?
Oh, no. I should have written down my notes. I had it all. I forgot.
It's page 105 of the agenda. I searched.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Through you, your worship, is this a difference between budgeting for it to be done versus resolving what the delivery will be or the outcome will be?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I suppose we're budgeting for something we haven't actually decided what we're going to do. So.
Well, we must have because we've already spent some, and we're carrying some over. I thought it said. I just can't find it either.
Is this on page 105?
Through you, your worship, was that not through the Ōtorohanga town concept plan?
It was part of the town concept plan, I think, and included in the LTP, and then we've developed the reserve management strategy and plan kind of, I guess, afterwards.
That's correct. So what we've pulled out there are deliverables that were agreed to in the long-term plan, including the costs. And as you can see, that's spread out over the first 3 years of the long-term plan.
So I'm saying that I can find the resolution. I found the resolution that we're going to prepare the draft prioritization program of the work, but I don't think we've done that, like a draft plan of, like step by step. And then I've written something else down, just bear with me. I'm not sure if it's in this because I can't find it. Actioning the 550K of capital expenditure set aside for each of the first 3 years of the 24-34 LTP. Not all the annual allocation for the plan implementation was spent in 24-25, and this money has been carried over. So what have we, my question was, what have we spent in 2025 and what was it on? If we haven't done our prioritization program? Sorry.
Through you, worship.
makes
Is this
sense.
is this for the overall concept plans, the prioritisation? Because we have done that, haven't we, Ross?
The resolution said that, I'm pretty sure, and I didn't, hang on. 25 June, oh no, don't worry about that, might be 24, directs the CE in conjunction with the Ōtorohanga and Kawhia community boards to prepare the draft prioritization programming of work supporting the implementation of the blah, blah, blah plans and present the program for council to consider. Have we done that?
Yes, we've done that.
So you've done that with our community board and I can't remember.
With both the community boards, and Ross is nodding, so I know.
So,
Yeah.
in some minutes.
And then brought to council.
Okay.
Yeah.
No, that's cool. So 24, August 24, it was. Okay. My bad. Thank you.
Councillor Jeffries.
Oh, thanks, Your Worship. I actually sent a list of questions and on the plan, and I'm just waiting for responses to those. I don't know whether we want to talk about those now or I'll copy the other councillors in on those.
You haven't received the responses to the questions? Or?
Not to these particular ones, no.
Sorry, Councillor Jeffries, can you just, which questions?
Okay, well.
Was it that the big list that I sent back
You sent them back because I've been there.
I sent back an attachment. Because I needed multiple staff to provide answers. Okay.
Yeah, so that was mid-afternoon yesterday, you would have received that.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, to be honest, I haven't seen this. So the questions have been answered there. I'm talking in terms of on the second page here, page 89, where there was just a query about the average rate increase, whether it should have been 10.16 or 10.12. So there was a typo there. But didn't you say, Nadia, earlier that average increase is now 9 something or other?
10 point, it's an increase of 0.4 over what?
The 9 is what was in the long-term plan, right? there's some pretty heavy stuff in here, and I don't know whether I need to be taking up council's time on this, but I'm quite happy to do that if you. Hmm.
While councillor Jeffries is reading those, is there any other questions, further questions from other councillors?
I might just comment in the gap. It's the questions that have been forwarded, I found were reasonable and actually it becomes part of how you read the agenda as well when you go back and look at at fellow members' questions and follow up on them.
Yes, thanks, Annette. Yeah, on page 167, I just made a general comment there about rates of affordability is becoming a real issue for many on fixed incomes, and the economies of scale in our communities are becoming increasingly evident, particularly when residential rates for some will exceed upwards of $6,500 to $7,000 in 25-26. I just make the point that, and I'm talking specifically of Carfree at this stage, but I know it affects other properties elsewhere, that with the proposed increase on top of the one that we've had this year, we've got some properties in Carfree that are going up, their rates are going up between 30 and 40% in 2 years. And you really do, it's very difficult to stand in front of somebody and eyeball them and explain what has caused that increase. And I can't, to be honest with you. I don't have the information that I need to say your rates in the last 2 years have gone up 40%, and this is why. So I'm really struggling with this, and it wasn't until I got the email from the last email from Brendan. Thank you, Brendan, for that. Which indicated that the average rate increase in Carfree, which I thought was going to come down a little bit because of the changes that the board had requested, has actually gone up even further, and it's actually now over 16%. And I talked to the board chairman this morning, and he and I are on the same page with this. In fact, Jeff was going to try and come in to be part of this discussion. I'm going to exercise a conscious vote on this, and I can't support it. I'm sorry. I want to be a member of the team, and I'd like to think that over the last 3 years I have been, but on this particular occasion, I just can't support it. So, so I don't know whether there's any point in going through the rest of this, but if everyone's got a copy of this reply, then I think I'll probably just leave it at that in the meantime. Mr. Mayor, thank you very much.
Thank you, councillor. You're more than welcome to express your democratic rights. So it's understandable. I mean, it's been challenged from right across the country. It's in the news every single day in terms of rates increases and the challenges it's putting on communities. And we talked about it a wee bit this morning. I mean, and part of one of our agenda items is talking about community grants. We can chop a whole lot of things out of what we do for our community, which will bring rates down to a level which is deemed acceptable. But it's that fine balancing act, isn't it, between having a vibrant community and rates affordability. So, yeah, I absolutely hear where you're coming from. And I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah, no, thanks for that. And I just make the further point, if I may, that you'd appreciate, and this is a point that's raised before, and I'd like to think that I've been fairly consistent with my approach to this right throughout. Is that we do have something like 80 plus leasehold properties in Carfree where the lease is on top of the rates, meaning that some people out there are having to pay upwards of $10,000 or $12,000 just to sit on that bit of land. And I'm just really concerned about the effect that this is going to have long term. We're going to see people leaving the town, and we could end up with just conceivably end up with a bit of a ghost town up there because people just can't afford to live there.
Has there
So
been
that's-
evidence of that at this point, councillor?
Well, I know that talking with real estate agents, Your Worship, they have basically said to me, please ask the council not to put the rates up in Kapia because they're having trouble selling properties out there. And potential purchasers are coming in and looking at the costs associated with owning a property or leasing a property out there. And it's just putting people off. So it's not just my opinion, it's a shared one. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. I think I've made my point. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion, councillors? Councillor Dowell?
I was just commenting, I'm kind of with Kit, but it's kind of the long-term plan is where we have to change direction as a council. If we want to cut all these things out and get the rates down, we probably should have done this. There'll be another 10-year long-term plan next year, probably. But yeah, the annual plan, we're kind of just following on from what we've signalled in the long-term plan, which, possibly we should just put our foots down then, or,
Yeah, it's interesting.
That's my comment.
Yeah, no, absolutely fair enough. But as we went out and did extensive community engagement under the adoption of our last LTP, and there's, and I mean, I'm talking extensive here, and the community said what they're after. They requested this, and we've followed through with what the community wanted. Unfortunately, it doesn't come for nothing, and we're just delivering on that. So yes, if there wants to be a change in direction in the next LTP, absolutely. Tanya, Councillor Williams.
Sorry, you were just picking up on that point. You can make quite significant changes in an annual plan. The trick is not triggering the significance policy so that we have to do an LTP amendment and go out and get it audited all again. So there are plenty of councils around the country who amend their direction, and we've got a new council coming in October. They may not want to wait until the next LTP. They may want to make some changes in the annual plan, and it's doable. And we go out and consult like other councils have, and we make those amendments. But there's a kind of fine balance between triggering that significance and having to do a full audit all over again, an LTP amendment. So yeah, any changes to our significant policies like revenue and financing, that sort of thing would require an audit again.
Thanks, Tanya. Look, I totally understand that, and timing of the adoption too is fairly critical too, isn't it? So look, if we could come to a position where the rate increases and again, sorry, folks, I'm talking specifically Carver here. If we could get to a position where the rate increase in Carver is the same as what was in year 2 of the LTP, that would change my position.
Thank you.
Because we've consulted on that, but we haven't consulted on this additional. Not really.
Thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Your Worship. There's a couple of things. We could be altruistic and, a community as a whole, and spread out tax on value across the whole district and share it among everybody. But that's not the structure that we currently have. And while we look at the things that the community need, when it comes to it, it's still applied to the valuation on a property. And that's out of our control. So if you want to have any more control over that, then a future council needs to look at how rates are struck, which is a big body of work and not something that we can achieve at this time. And when I did look at the information that you and others had put together from the community board, it's unfortunate, but if you're sitting on a property that's been valued by an external organisation at more than $1 million, then there is going to be a significant effect on small changes.
Thank you. Councillor Christensen.
Thanks, Your Worship. I'm just following on from Kit and what Tanya just said. So a question for me and it relates back to the 540 for concept plans and stuff. Like how much of our rates for both the Kawhia community, district and town what percentage is made up of us not charging, but moving forward, developing these plans? Like we went out and did lots of consultation, but did we put a dollar figure on the increase to rates that all these aspirations and hopes and wants had? Like, did we actually say this is going to push your rates up 1%, 0.5%? And like, if we just hung back and just put the brakes on for a bit, we've got a lot of our plans done. I don't know. Is that an option, or is it going to make a difference? Or sorry, Brendan.
I guess the original budget to do the TCP was actually not in this LTP, it was the previous LTP. So really stretching my brain here to try and think that we put. I think it was one of the items we consulted on was the TCP. And that might have, if it was, that would have had what the rates impact was. But I'm struggling to remember for sure. So if we did include that as one of our big items we consulted on, then yes, we would have had what the rates impact is, what the debt impact is. In terms of the actual work, they've all been debt funded. They've been treated like a capital project from a funding point of view. So we haven't put rates up specifically by that amount to cover it. There is obviously a rates impact to that debt to pay the interest and repay the loans. But of course, we only take on the debt at the end after we know what we spent for a year. So while we budget for 550K, for example, we only take on as much debt as we need to fund that. So yeah.
So
Goodness, if I can't get my head around it.
no. So through you, Your Worship, yes, we could put the brakes on. Yep. Council could make a decision to say, let's slow the implementation down. We could bring the priorities back to you. You could have a look at them and you could say, we want to stretch these out over 10 years, or instead of having 10 priorities, we want to now have 5 or 1 in each community or something like that. And then we don't take on as much debt, and then we don't have as much impact in terms of rates. So yes,
because I was just thinking, like, we've spent a bit of time out at Kawhia lately, and like, so how much is that costing the community for staff time to be out there? Is that a way we can soften the rates a bit more?
So just back to that thing, Tanya, thanks, Councillor Kristen. If you put the brakes on, that doesn't change the adoption in the plan. It's just slowing down the process afterwards, correct? Okay. So it's like you still adopt the annual plan, but the directive to the staff would be, can we just slow down the implementation of the capital works, whatever works is going to go on?
But that's not going to have any effect on the rates take.
Not for the current year, but might for the following year. 26, 27.
Yeah, we're doing it for 24,
25,
but 26. So if we put the brakes on, why is it not affecting that? Because we've budgeted to keep going. I can't get
to do that. We would have to redo the budgets, which then obviously would delay the adoption of the annual plan, which delays our ability to set our rates, which has flow-on effects. So there's nothing to say, I guess, if we got that direction, we could do that. It means because legislatively we're required to adopt an annual plan by the 30th of June. Time frames get very tight.
Yeah, it is. But did some councils have not pushed it out before? Yeah. Okay. So you can't push it out to do something like that.
Long-term plan.
I don't know. Everyone's talking about fixed income and how hard it is, and I don't know. Just my thoughts.
I wonder, it's just going back to Kit's comments about Kawhia. So the difference between what we said in the LTP for Kāwhia overall rates, community rates, and where we've landed is 1.48%. Okay, so that's the difference.
In dollar terms, it's $33,000 different. Yeah, well, can I just make the point though that that at the time that the community board made these recommendations to council for what they thought was going to bring the rate down by about 1% or 1.5%.
Yeah.
So in effect, by introducing an average rate increase now of over 16%, the movement is actually more than because you had that reduction with those changes, but then it's gone back up to 16%.
No, it's come down from what we originally presented to the board. We presented 17 point something,
17%.
down to 16.
Okay.
Yeah, you're still up on what was in the LTP, yes.
Well,
You're actually down on what was originally presented to the board
Yeah.
before those changes.
No, you're right. There's that many figures running around at the moment. It's hard to keep track.
I know how you feel, yeah.
I think the other three things through you, Your Worship, is the board made some really great suggestions, but some of them require LTP amendments. They're changes to those policies I was talking about. Some of them, I know Graham's working on boat fee, now park charges and things like that. They're going to take longer to implement. So there was a little that we could do immediately that had an effect.
So I think, yeah, look, it is really good questions, and it is quite confronting for so many people. And what I see here is in terms of, a real different direction for the next LTP, probably when we talk about a vibrant, engaged community, it comes at a cost. And I think probably when the reality kicks in, it's a different discussion needs to be had. Councillor Dow.
Oh, no, my comment was, it's just this meeting has been, the agenda is quite large. I've spent so much time on the water because that's important for the future of our district, I think. And the annual plan's kind of taken a bit of a backseat. So I'm not sure whether we should have had all in one meeting or had more time to really deep dive into the annual plan, and then maybe we could pull it back a percent or two. But
Good point through you, Your Worship.
But I understand that, you're trying to work to timelines and all that, but I mean, maybe we should have started work in January, not February. Get everything done.
We originally said to you we wanted to have the annual plan adopted in May. It was on the agenda. We pulled it because there was extra work asked for. So we were acutely aware of the fact that we had two large agenda items on one agenda, and we tried to stagger them. But the feedback was, we need more time. We want you to go away and do more work. So we did that more work. So yeah, totally understand and agree with you. But we've now got the perfect storm, and that we've got deadlines to meet. Yeah.
Absolutely get your point, Councillor, and I feel for the staff as well with the workload that's gone on them to get us to where we are. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Your Worship. Mine is just a clarification point on page 129. Could you just explain regarding the stop banks? So we obviously own them all. So what is the regional council's role here?
So Mark might be able to explain this better than I can, but I've got a pretty good idea. So the regional council collects a rate across the whole region, I believe, or lots of regions called Project Watershed. And so that is money specifically for funding flood protection. So they collect that rate from our ratepayers, as well as ratepayers right throughout the Waikato. And then they give us money. They basically fund all the maintenance and keeping up the stop banks. So we don't charge any rates to our ratepayers ourselves for flood protection. It all comes from the regional council.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Look, I think what we've got here, there's a couple of things that come out of this. Everybody's under a huge workload. There's some major agenda items that come on here. I suppose that a lot of what we've asked for and have done in the adoption of the last LTP was about really setting a pathway forward for the community. we've been confronted by some huge rates increases, which when we look at a percentage basis are quite huge. When we look at our rates versus the rest of New Zealand, they're still quite low. So I think we've always got to keep that in context as well. And I think in terms of the feedback for the community to say, yes, the rates increases have been high over the last couple of years, and that is so we can actually implement some of the ideas that the community has had. The next LTP, we can look at addressing that, but also being very, very mindful that percentage it's a percentage, it's not an actual figure. The dollar figure is probably the more important figure. And as Brendan said, you get a 0.4% rates increase and it's only $33,000 of total expenditure for Kāwhia, but it has a massive impact. So there's a whole lot of things come into it, which, you do have the opportunity to address further down the track. So with no further questions, we have a staff recommendation that I'll just be right carry on. As much as there's been a lot of discussion about the council logo, etc. over times, the annual plan looks really good. It's presented really well. I like the hee bird on each page. It's going to be controversial, but it looks good, so thank you. Our staff recommendation is that Ōtorohanga District Council adopt the 25-26 annual plan. I'd like to move that. Do I have a seconder? Second, Councillor Williams. All in favour, raise your hands. Against? Would you like that noted, Councillor? Carried. Thank you. Right. Thank you very much. Look, there's some across all of the country, some really tough decisions being made at the moment on behalf of our communities, because it is quite confronting, there's no question. And I think all of us, well, absolutely everybody sitting around this table is confronted with the same rates increases that everybody else is. So we're going to backtrack. We'll stay here while Brendan's still there. Yeah, we're connected, yeah. Karen, item 251, rates resolution 25-26. Don't go anywhere.
Yeah.
Sorry, page 174. Thank you, Brendan.
Right. So on the back of now having adopted the annual plan, and my previous report regarding the water charges for Ōtorohanga, we now have the rates resolution. So this is the report that basically allows us to set our rates for the year, tells us what our rates are going to be in the dollar or per rating unit, depending on the method of charging. The recommendation is extremely long and detailed, and I'm not expecting Max to read it out either. But basically, yes, this is what we're setting the rates on. This is all has been checked by Graham back to what is in the annual plan document, so they do both match. We've also, Councillor Jeffries asked this question yesterday. We've done a dummy stroke, so we've loaded it all into our magic system, run what we would get and check the income, and that matches to what we require. So we're all good from that point of view. This also, I guess, towards the end of the resolution does state when the penalty dates are for the rates and the water, as well as how people pay their rates. That's all the stuff that's required under the legislation. Take it as read. Answer any questions.
Thank you, Brendan. Just by default, I always have to ask the question, are your decimal points in the right place?
Yes. that was one of the things Graham checked, and yes.
Okay. Any questions, councillors? So as Tanya quite rightly said, the race resolution follows on from the annual plan, so we adopted the annual plan. So therefore, with the staff recommendation in front of us, without going through it in detail, because we've taken it as read, I'd like to move the resolution. Do I have a seconder for that? Seconder, Councillor Williams. All in favour? Yes. Carried. Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, Brendan. Thank you, Graham. Moving back to welcome back to item 247, Water Services Delivery Plan on page 52. And welcome, Councillor Lawson. Welcome, Martin Ann.
So there's the power connection that the dark's going to look at the next slide.
What's this computer?
Welcome, Mark.
Morning, Your Worship, councillors. Just also introduction to Anne here with me today, and just I've said it probably at every report I've brought. My name might sit on this report, but I'm not the one that's doing all the work. So there is a team behind this, and I think that's just to be recognised again. And that team is in the room and will help me answer any questions, hopefully. Just for the archivists in the future, I think there's one correction we need to make. I'm not the group manager of infrastructure and assets, it's engineering and assets. So that sounds pretty good, but just a correction there. So you have in front of you today a significant decision report, and it's on the preferred service delivery for water and wastewater services for Ōtorohanga into the future. The report also concludes the deliberations on the submissions from the consultation on the preferred model and asks that you endorse the responses to the submitters. This report is another step in the process, which has been ongoing over the last 12 months. As we determine how water services will be delivered into for Ōtorohanga under the local water done well government policy and respective legislation. The report details the background and how we reached this point, so I'm not going to go into that in any great detail, but there is a recommendation in front of you today, and that is that Ōtorohanga District Council adopt the Waikato Water Done Well model as the delivery model for water services. Noting in that recommendation, you'll see that that decision to become a stage 1 shareholder is requisite on the future documentation being signed. So the decision today is to adopt the model. The actual decision to become a stage 1 shareholder sits within the documentation that would come at a later date. So I think that's quite important to note. The other thing I just want to clarify, although it's written there in the recommendation, is that Waikato Water Done Well is only for water and wastewater. Stormwater would remain with council. And at this stage, it would be delivered in-house, although that mechanism hasn't been determined yet. So either way, it would still sit with Ōtorohanga, and how that activity is delivered into the future, we haven't quite worked through that piece of work yet. So I would like to take the report as read, and I think answer any questions that you may have. My team might answer some questions too.
Awesome. Thank you, Mark. Yes, the report is read, as has the last couple of years of going through this process of what water service delivery is going to look like. I've been involved in local government for 15 years, and this year is the biggest decision over those 15 years that we're likely to make, or we have made or will make. And we're relying on trying to see beyond the next couple of years what the future looks like, which is the hardest challenge amongst us all. So there's a heck of a lot of assumptions being made to think we come up with the right model. We're also faced with government legislation, which is increasingly a massive burden on councils such as our own, in fact, all councils. And even the rhetoric yesterday coming out of the government was about getting rid of regional councils and centralising a lot of the services. So you can almost see a shaping of what the future of local government looks, so it doesn't look like. So again, there's a lot of assumptions made in this, and the people who have led the discussions around this, being Vaughan and Don, have got over 50 years of local government experience here. So there's a lot of background, a lot of experience, a lot of knowledge that has led the discussion around here. And if I went purely on an emotive basis, I would say I'd like to keep it in-house, because that's how I feel like, you know, we've delivered water services very, very well, but we have been delivering water services under a completely different model to what is in front of us and what we're going to face in the future. And we know that, which is why we've penned that term enhanced status quo, because things will change. So yeah, hopefully we'll put a few criteria in there to ensure that we, again, are no worse off than what we would be if we did the enhanced status quo model going forward, and that there's hopefully our protection against being hurt in the future. But yeah, I've been in probably 20 times more meetings than everybody else in this room, and it's still a challenge to get your head around. There's no question. So we have a recommendation in front of us, but before we go to anything there, then I'll certainly open up the floor to comments. Councillor Prendergast.
Could you just, through your worship, if it's possible, can someone clarify what percentage the Ōtorohanga District Council would own in the Waikato Waters Dunwell CCO if all the councils that have indicated they're going to join do join? And like, how is that calculated?
Through you, 4% at the moment, and it's based on the number of water connections. So the percentage can change. It gets reviewed every year. Is it annually that it gets changed, or and reviewed, or every 3 years? There is a clause in the agreement around a review of that shareholding, and it may go kind of up and down depending on the number of connections.
So there is no accounting for the amount of actual asset capital. It's just on connection.
Yeah, and it's based on per 1,000 connections. So the review that Tanya spoke about is, should your district increase in percentage of connections, that would be a trigger to review your percentage of shares. So how that gets calculated across the whole lot, I'm not sure, but there is measures in there. It's calculated.
Thank you. We'll go to Councillor Dowd, Johnson, then Christensen.
Thank you, Max. I've shared my thoughts in email with all the elected members and Tanya, so I assume you've all read them. I just thought I'd like to add, and so I wrote it down so it's a bit more clearer than muddling, hopefully. So I just thought I should mention the benefits for the people who deliver the district water services. Keeping water services in-house would enable locals to learn skills that smaller councils could provide. I remember back when I was an apprentice, at trade school, and the apprentices from the bigger companies were jealous because I got to do everything, because that's what you do in a small company. I got to learn more skills and had more variety, as that's what needed to happen to keep me busy. The apprentices from the bigger companies only got to do limited jobs, and bigger places didn't require them to do theirs multi-skilled. So I'd like our council to provide opportunities for our people as they leave college and begin their working life. It's one of the great satisfactions in life for me to see a person learn and be involved in helping them on their way. Keeping it in-house is the best way to look after our people. So I was quite happy I wrote that, and I went to bed and I thought, good, I've put this to bed, all my thoughts. But hello, my brain woke me up at 1:22 a.m. I was awoken with thoughts of our district mowing contract. So I'd just like to add a recent example of what we've done in the Ōtorohanga district. If we think of Downers who have over 26,000 people in the organisation, then they should have scale to provide a better service. And yet, for our mowing contract, we have a local contractor was preferred. This example to me is evidence that scale is not always the best way to go. So my summary is still the same as it was that I emailed to you all spending over 600,000 on setting up a new company to take over what we have control of now for a 4% share just doesn't seem like a good deal to me. That's my thoughts. So,
Thank you, councillor. That's why we love democracy. Yeah. And it's, again, this is not the easy decision for anybody. And look, we can all bring up examples of scale where it hasn't benefited. But probably in terms of a lot of the companies we talk about haven't been directed by government legislation either. Which is the other big challenge we're facing. Councillor Johnson.
You've got two questions, and noting, Mark, that you just said before that it hadn't been decided about how we would deliver the stormwater in-house. But I'm just wondering, will that, just your opinion, is that going to require another administration on the part that we don't already have to deliver that? You know, so we're going to get additional costs for keeping that stormwater component in-house. I'm just wondering what extra costs are we going to incur from what we already have?
Yes, it's, I mean, that's a really good question. So I suppose we haven't got into the real detail of it, but we've got some thoughts. Well, I've got some thoughts of, I suppose the first question to ask is where it would sit within the organisation, which activities. So we obviously considering whether it sits in roading or whether it sits in community facilities. Community facilities probably makes the most sense at this stage because community facilities also looks after flood protection and reserves, which incorporates a lot of our stormwater retention areas. So fortunately, our water services in Brenham are already quite reasonably ring fenced. So the actual separation from the current financial structure would be a big, well, I say from my thoughts, seems simple. The other factor that is being considered at this stage is potentially the non-potable rural water schemes that need to also be serviced as part of that. So there's a piece of work that would probably incorporate stormwater and rural water schemes. Now, that doesn't mean deliver the actual service in-house. It might mean simply managing service in-house and a local contractor, for example, delivering the actual work. Again, we haven't gotten to that level of detail, and I suppose it's something that I will have to focus on quite considerably shortly. But at this stage, to meet our obligations, it's about showing in our water service delivery plan what we intend to do. So stormwater will sit separately in there and how we'll indicate. So I don't know if that answers your question. But on the other side of, I suppose, just a bit further, there's the physical delivery, but then there will also be the increased reporting requirements for stormwater alone. So it will have to have its own, I suppose, strategies and its water service strategy, which it won't be complex. It's a very small part of Three Waters for Ōtorohanga anyway. But yeah, so I don't want to say anything I might have to undo later on, but I would imagine we have the capacity to deal with that currently and within that, yeah. So.
And my second question I had was just regarding the other councils. Are we the last ones to be voting on this, or have the other? No. Well, where are we in that? Who's said yes?
Are we leading it today or not?
So you wish I can check the timeline in a minute. I haven't got that open, but I think we and another council are making a decision today, but I'm not sure. And certainly this week and next week, most of the councils will make their decision. Waipa will be the last one because theirs is intricately linked with their long-term plan, their delayed long-term plan. So they have to wait till the end of July when they're doing that.
I think Marapiako and Hauraki are both this week. As we're speaking now, Thames Coromandel, who aren't part of it, they're just going through their discussion now. So waiting to see what the outcome of their decision is, because they they've looked at all different options. Standalone was one, going with Tauranga and Whakatane, I think was the other one, or Western Bay of Plenty maybe. And now they're deliberating about whether they want to come and join Waikato Water Done Well. So a lot's happening this week. Councillor Christensen.
Okay, I've got a story. First of all, I would just like to make a comment. Like, I know how much work everyone has put into this, and yeah, it's huge. And thank you so much. I would have loved to have seen a dollar figure for transparency in our public report, like how much that 4% actually is, which is 660K. And like, if we opt in, is that an upfront? I know it's loan funded and all that sort of stuff, whatever, but is it upfront or is it drip fed? I don't know, because it's not in there. We talk about the legislative changes coming our way, so we can't be status quo, but I'm still not clear what they are, because the health board had the regulations and they just didn't manage it well. So that's on the government for not managing their contractor, and we're having to pick up the pieces. ComCom's coming, but is that not just reporting on transparency and performance and pricing and efficiency, which we should be doing now, is how I think. So I haven't been able to sleep very well for a little while because, like your worship said, this is one of the biggest decisions. Last night, my voice is shaking. I made my decision and I actually had a really good night's sleep. So I'm going to read you my decision. And that's democracy at work, like your worship said. So these are my reasons that I'll be voting against this recommendation. I know we've been given lots of comparative information between enhanced status quo and Waikato Water Done Well. And yes, on paper, Waikato Water scores slightly higher overall, 68 versus 60, and that's by us, we did that. But when you look closer, Waikato Water only scores better in two areas: financial sustainability, and operational effectiveness. And let's be honest, those financial scores are based on a lot of assumptions. They rely on modelling and projections that may not play out the way we expect. And that makes me uncomfortable when we're talking about giving up local control. The enhanced status quo actually scores better in community connectedness and is on par with Waikato Water in areas like maintaining viability and upholding partnerships, things that I think are really important in our district. We keep hearing that status quo isn't an option because of legislation change, and I get that, but that doesn't automatically mean we should go with Waikato Water, especially now that the ComCom steps in, I think next month, taking on a regulatory role across all water service providers, whether they're councils or shared entities like Waikato Water. That means everyone will be expected to meet the same standards around transparency, performance, pricing, and efficiency, if I'm right. I'm not 100% sure that I'm right there. So are we not doing this now? And if not, why? And if we are, then what are the extra things we need to do other than supply this information? And Mark just alluded to stormwater. We're going to have to provide that information, reporting. So we're going to have to, in my mind, set up something that does that reporting anyway. So I'm also not comfortable with the clause, and I thought I was, but I've been thinking about it, that says we'll move to stage 2 in 27-28 as long as we're no worse off. That's a pretty vague benchmark to hang such a big decision on. I personally think I'd like to see real measurable improvements, not just that we're not going backwards. Once we hand over our assets and join a shared entity, That's not something we can easily walk away from. So while I appreciate and acknowledge the long, hard hours that staff and everyone have put into this, I'm not dismissing the challenges ahead, but I don't believe Waikato Water is the right direction for us at this point. There's too much uncertainty for me and not enough guaranteed benefit for our community. So that's why I've made my decision, and I slept really well last night. I'm voting against it. Just sharing my thoughts.
I applaud you for the work that you put into that, because it is a big decision, there's no question. And look, for me as the mayor or the chair, I'm not going to lose sleep over what decisions be made here, because it is democracy going forward. You know, probably where I sit is, and I hear you, there's so much uncertainty around this. I'm probably trying to take my head out. What are we looking? And this is where the hard part comes. What does 10 years plus look like? But the other part that really plays a part of my mind is when I was in Minister Watts's office, and he pretty much expressed that unless you're going to go with a group like Waikato Water done well, but they're going to make it incredibly hard on councils to survive alone, and the pressure will be such that they'll pretty much make you transition. So, but there's uncertainty around that as well. What does that even look like in terms of, you know, is Ōtorohanga being forced into this? Is at this stage, Ruapehu District hasn't made a decision yet, but I think they're looking at us as well. Councils are struggling. They're struggling to make a decision as to what the future looks like, because what we see at the moment, you know, our long-term plan, we set a projection going forth, and we find that a year down the track, we're not even right there. Correct, Councillor Jeffries, in terms of what those cost predictions are like. My other big concern will be as a small council, and I think about when the sewage main blew out of Kakamutu, and the unbudgeted expenditure of that was about 350,000, I think. And all it takes is a couple of those in Ōtorohanga where we can't aggregate that pricing across the bigger entity, then we've got a rates increase, which is absolutely massive, because I mean, I know it'll be loan funded as well, but it still has an impact on what our future looks like. So look, this is the great thing about democracy. So any further questions, councillors?
Just through you, worship time.
You're off.
I found the timeline. So we are the first ones to make a decision. Hauraki in South Waikato tomorrow, Matamata Piako on Thursday, Waitomo next Monday, is that the 30th? Yep. And then in July, Taupo and Waipa.
Councillor Hughes.
Thank you, Worship. I just want to make a bit of a statement. As you said, this is a big decision, probably the biggest, well, that is the first term councillor we're going to have to make. I wasn't as flash as Councillor Christensen. I wrote anything down. I'm sort of just going off the cuff here. But when this was all first mooted, my analytical brain said to me it's a no-brainer to go along with this financially and sustainably. But as the time's gone on and we've been given more information, I can see we're sort of almost, as Councillor Christians have said, but we're having a crystal ball gaze here, which is a very difficult thing to do. And you know, we could be right for the next 10 years, gone status quo, but you don't know what happens in the next 10 years. It could be the same with Waikato Water done well. Things could, I mean, you talk about Minister Watts, he ain't going to be there forever. And, you know, you got changes in governments in the next 10 years. Are we going off in another direction? We don't know. There's so many unknowns and assumptions. So I looked at it initially with my analytical brain, and I'm not, I would say, you go back to what you said before, Your Worship, about the emotive side of it. I'm not an overly emotional person. My bandwidth would probably sit somewhere between happy when the Chiefs win and gutted when they don't, sort of thing. That's you know. So, but I must say that although we didn't have a lot of submitters on this, Thea King, who came in here and submitted, who spoke to her submission that day, up until hearing that, I was pretty much on one side, and that was, we're going to go this way. something, I don't know why, something just struck me with what she said, you know, and this goes back, and I'll just sort of address the Merrick ward councillors here, but you know, I don't know a hell of a lot about what goes on within Murray as far as, but what I do know is that they treasure things like the water and the land and this sort of thing, and this is what Thea brought into this, and it really made me think, and to the point where I think the emotional side of it is as important as the financial side, because as Councillor Christensen alluded to, we're dealing with our local communities, and I've spoken to people out in the local community. They don't understand any of the financial side of any of this, not at all. We're struggling to get a head around it, along with the assumptions. People have said to me that, you know, why do we have to give everything away to this big entity? You know, they see what happens in power companies, and you know, they're big when the government sold off parts of the power companies, and all of a sudden see all these prices go up. It runs parallel with this sort of thing. We don't know where the Waikato Water Done Well will end up. And I would hope that we could sort of make an effort to, if we went status quo, to keep a lid on things, costs and everything the best we could. I know there's regulatory stance, but then again, this is 10 years out. What's going to change in that time? So this is my 10 cents worth on this. So going from at the start, yep, no, we're going this way, and I fully realise that, and I understand your comments, Your Worship, on, you know, where we probably could end up. But I hate to use the word, but I've flip-flopped a bit on this now, and I'm sort of leaning more towards the status quo and working damn hard to make it work. And this is it. So that's my 10 cents worth on that. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Councillor. Just a couple of points here. We had a meeting with iwi chairs yesterday, and in support of Waikato Water Done Well. So in terms of the iwi aspect on there. The other part, just remember the previous government was doing 3 waters where there's going to be 4 waters entity, and there's 4 water entities, and it's going to be compulsory. So yeah. I don't think you think change of government's going to make it any better for you. Regardless of which way it goes, central government is going to put the pressure on us.
Yeah, I fully understand that. You know, it will go that way, but it's just I need to be able to walk out of here and face the ratepayers and say that I've made the best decision that I think for you, from the feedback I've had from them. I mean, the biggest thing, as I alluded to before, is that people don't understand it, all the implications of it, either way. So, yeah, this is where this decision has become, Councillor Christensen says she slept well last night. I did not at all. And I can say, because I had all of this stuff running through my head. It wasn't an 11th hour decision. It was something that's been playing on my mind for a while. And I just, when the government came in, they said, we want local people making local decisions. Well, instead of centralising everything, but they seem to be wanting to go the centralisation route as well, which is difficult to comprehend from what they've actually said before. But I just feel that we may be small enough to be a niche. I would hope we could be, and if we play our cards right, we could certainly make it work. But it's just my opinion, and I'm not trying to sway anybody else on this. It's just how I feel at this stage. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Jeffries.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yes, there's been some good comments from my fellow councillors. I just wanted to perhaps reiterate the email that I sent out to everyone a day or two back. And that was that in terms of prudency, for me, we've still got an opportunity to bail out or pull out. And the thing that's always bothered me, and I guess everyone else too, is that we don't actually have any dollars to indicate to us whether we're going to be worse off or not. So I'm sort of, I guess, hedging my bets a little bit there. I'd like to know what the outcome of that exercise is going to be before I support it one way or the other. But the other exercise, which is probably even more important, is that if water services were lost to or transferred to, lost is not quite the right word, transferred to a CCO, is the remaining unit of local government, which is us, going to be sustainable and viable going forward? And I am really interested in the outcome of that exercise as well, because it could well mean that having transferred our water assets to a CCO, that as a unit of local government, we've suddenly become quite a small unit. And then does that force us to look at how we go forward in the future in terms of, do we get into bed with our neighbours? So for me, there's a whole lot of balls up in the air, and I totally understand where the other councillors are coming from. But I just wondered, in terms of being prudent, whether we should at least take it to the next step and get those figures so that we can actually make an informed decision, as opposed to an emotive one. So that's me anyway. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor. Loving these conversations. Do you want something?
Am I able to respond?
Yes.
Yeah, through you, Worship. We're not going to have that information for you ahead of making this decision. So, yeah, is that what you're asking?
No, I'm saying that I think that we should proceed with getting into stage one.
Yeah.
But only on the understanding that we've got that right to withdraw, if you like, before we commit to stage two.
Yeah.
And I guess by doing that, it gives us the time that we need perhaps to have a look and just see whether these figures stack up or not. If they don't stack up, I'm opposed to it.
Yeah.
But if we can show that there are some real financial benefits, then why wouldn't you?
Yeah, it would give us time to do both pieces of work. So I spoke with Vaughan this morning, because it's all very well having the council resolution about not being worse off, but I was thinking what was keeping me awake was how does it actually work? What are the mechanics around that? How do we put that into action? So it would be negotiated as part of our transfer agreement. So there's already the lowest price pathway included in the foundation documents, because of course everyone's interested in that. The other councils are as well. But for us as Ōtorohanga, we would put our council resolution into our transfer agreement and negotiate that into it. So and the enhanced status quo is the modelling we've done at this point in time with Becca. So it would be compared against that.
Yeah, thanks, Tanya. Can I just also make the point too that there are two aspects of this. If we vote against this today, then there's no point in looking at the transfer agreement or the constitution, is there? So no workshop. So I don't use that as a good reason. But I think we just need to be aware that, as part of that transfer, sure, no worse off situation, but that's only going to last for 3 years. So what happens after the 3 years? There could be catch-ups. Who knows? So there's no guarantee that after 3 years that we're going to be no worse off. And secondly, the other thing that really concerned me, and I asked Vaughan when he was here the other day, was if at some stage a council becomes part of the CCO and then for whatever reason needs to actually get out of that, they can't. It's quite clear in the response that I've got, I assume from Sienard, is it, that once you've got your shares in the company, you can't sell them you can't trade them or sell them, you're locked in. So that sort of sent a bit of a red flag for me as well. So Yes, there's a whole host of issues around this and,
Yeah, I think in regard to that, councillor, I mean, for the Waikato water done well model to be sustainable, then you would have to lock everybody in.
yes,
There's no certainty in anything if you've got people coming and going depending on their whim on the day.
that's why it's so important that you're absolutely confident about the benefits of it before you commit. Yeah.
Yeah, so I guess your job as the council would to ensure that the mayor, because they are the rep on the shareholders representative forum, is fully engaged in that forum, that they are taking your concerns, the community concerns, whatever, back through that forum, the appointment of directors, the approval of a statement of expectations, the reporting back, all of that becomes vital to ensure that our expectations of that company are met.
Yes,
But there are no guarantees.
And sorry, just one further. It was quite clear in the document that I read that that after 10 years, how is it put? I might just have to come back to that because I need to go back and just have another look at that. But there was something after that 10-year period that concerned me as well.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I'm just, since we're all navel gazing and talking around here, I'm just want to say that I'm in support of this staff recommendation. And but I just want to say a couple of things, and that is, just earlier in this meeting, we discussed the implications of the rising rate increase in car fare compared with other parts of the district. And one of those reasons is that there's just not sufficient ratepayers out there to smooth out those costs. Now, that's a good analogy for this. If we have one small company in amongst something a lot, or one water entity in amongst something a lot bigger, we don't have the ability to smooth out those costs. And look, hey, I agree with Max and the other councillors. Emotionally, yes, we'd like to stay with the status quo, but these are one of the hard decisions of council, and the principles that are a big tick for me. And look, I have to say, as a rural councillor, most of my constituents aren't concerned with this at all. It makes no difference to them, except we've got a very hardcore rural water scheme members who do rely on this system, and they have stressed numerous times and quite strongly that they wish to have good representation and representation pathway. And given that it's only 4%, you might say, well, they'll just get lost in the noise, and they might. But part of this is that we have that pathway of representation, and for those people that I'm mostly concerned with, that is one of the reasons that I think that we need to go with this. But otherwise, I mentioned it last night at the Council of Korero. I mean, these things need volume to work. If we have the other councils drop out, if we, splinter, fractious, I mean, there's less chance of it working. But if we can use those economies of scale for borrowing, for purchasing, if we're all in it together, it's got a good chance of working. And so we have to be brave. And, I know there's no financial benefits for 10 years. I mean, it'd be great to walk out of here and say, yes, the water users of here are going to benefit straight away, but they're not. It's a leap of faith. But those principles of your representation is ticked off, and the advantages of volume and economies of scale are all reasons why I'm going to support this recommendation.
Thank you, councillor. I'll move on to councillor Christensen, then councillor Prendergast.
Thanks, Your Worship. I was just going to if I can make a comment to what Councillor Johnson just said about kawhia. So there's no benefit for 10 years. So in 10 years' time, there might not be many people left in kawhia to get the benefit because they can't afford the next 10 years. Yeah, that's one thing. And if like it goes through and in the next year or up until stage 2, we put over 600K into it. If we did opt out, that's just stays with them. We wouldn't get that back. No. And also just one, yeah, I've talked about it before and I just want to say it again. If the people that are going to vote for this, just think about if you're comfortable with the no worse off, or maybe you should think about a change to the wording. Like, do we really want to go with something that's no worse off?
I think there's a guideline. I think when it comes down to, so what is the document called again? Jeez. Statement of interpretation. Yeah, I think that
It's a guideline, but it's also a recommendation in the public.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
let you think on that in terms of if you want to change the wording, what would work better, no worse off. That's the hard one. Yeah, okay, we'll think about that. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd just like to reiterate what Councillor Johnson said and add a couple of points. And one of them is that, you know, we've got our climate change paper coming up. No. And that deals with some pretty conflicting possibilities. And I think we have to be very realistic about, you know, facing anything that is going to give us an enormous cleanup and cost to our existing water structures, and our ability, if we don't go with the CCO, our ability to cope with that and the impact that would have on our ratepayers, because it couldn't be favourable. And the other thing is working with Commerce Commission is not a breeze. They are not there to be your friends, and I said that to Vaughan in one of our workshops, and he agreed with me completely. We in the Lions Company have worked, obviously have to work with them all the time. It is really hard work. So if anyone thinks that it's going to be a breeze being regulated by them, that's just not the case.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Tamaki.
Morena. Me, taisoko ngā kōrero ngā wakato. I think for me, lots of things happen. So when we talk about water, we talk about the water in the river, we talk about water coming out of the tap, we talk about water that our body is made up 80% of. And that's just the way in which Māoridom looks at water. So water is not just what comes out of our tap, it's around what's in our atmosphere. And I think for me, 10 years is not very long. It's not long at all. I've listened to TNN's hui, I've talked to Sam, I've talked to Hapu and Iwi, I've talked to Whare around our stance or direction on where I might sit with this stuff for them. They are in support of what I've done, like you've mentioned, Max. And I think one of those reasonings is that we don't know how to, Māoridom doesn't know how to collectively structure delivery of water. But one thing we can do is we can look after the water before it comes through the taps. And that's what I think for us is most important, the quality of the water, so that my mokopuna and others mokopuna can swim in the awa like we always have. Delivery of water, yes, it's going to be different. Is it going to be cost effective? We don't know. But I have faith that we've put those measurements in line with, yes, we're no better off or no worse off. We can revisit that And I have faith that this council moving forward in the next triennium will have, you know, if I'm not sitting here, will have that ability to stand up and be brave and say, actually, it's not working for our ratepayers. It's not all our residents or our community. But it is a decision. And once a wise man said one time, when the king was being, when Te Ate had passed away and the king, we had hui and the, you know, we're arguing about who's going to do what and if, should it be a king, should it be a queen, what's happening. And this really humble man stood up and said, decisions are a necessity. They're not always liked. They have to be made. And out of that, I thought, that's true. But he did say too, us old ones was right here. We're not always here to live those decisions out. But we are here to help sculpture them and structure them. And I think on that framework alone of structure, I know that hapu iwi landowners, even tenant, don't have the capacity to be able to structure this massive amount of money that's going to be here for 100 years. So for me, it's about making those decisions going forward for my mokopuna, so that if one day she sits here or they sit here, they can understand because where the decisions have come from and why they are the way they are. So that you know, I'm in, I don't know if I should, I don't know if I shouldn't. Lots of people say do it, lots of people say don't. I listened to Auntie Thea's kōrero, and when we did those surveys, yes, all that economic stuff was taken out, and those emotional triggers guided my answers. And I thought, at the end of the day, if we can stay true to what we say we're going to do, and yes, some of those were based on not as an infrastructure, but as a modi in terms of my water decision. And today, my decision will be around sustainability of that for my people, which will be to go with water about that. So, ngā mihi kia koutou katoa. Yeah, kia ora.
Thank you, councillor. Okay.
Thank you. I'm guided by the vision te mana o te wai, te mana o te tangata. It's a lot of people with a lot of experience and skill are all working together in our region, and we can go alone and just be looking after how it's delivered in this pocket, but there's an opportunity here to do it well with others under a vision that I think, yeah, people are really being guided by. I don't think we're giving up anything. The structure itself is still going to stay in the ground, still going to be delivering. People come into the district and move out. They don't take their water pipes with them and take it on to another area where they're going to be better looked after. The leap of faith, I understand how that comes about, but it's leaping with good information that, okay, there are assumptions there and they're yet to be laid out, but there's a lot of economic decisions are made about many other things based on models and assumptions, and that's where the faith has to be at this point. And we've got mechanisms in place to be watching that and to make sure that when we do come to no worse off, which I'm still comfortable with, because we can't say we want to be better off. There's no guarantee on that either. But at least if we're not worse off, we've still got a cup half full. yeah, clearly you can see I'm supporting it.
Thank you, councillor. Oh, just, I think everybody said their tune. I know there's one point you wanted to go back to, councillor Jeffries, if you found it.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, that 10% was, figure of 10% was, saying that it was going to be at least 10% before you, 10 years before you saw any benefits from the, yeah. Can I just ask a general question though of councillors Tamaki and Wilson? The chairs forum, the Iwi Chairs Forum, comprises John Bishara, Evelyn Forrest, Katarina Hodge, Tuku Morgan, Peter Douglas and David Taupiri. Are you comfortable with that makeup? Do they support or represent the coastal Iwi?
If you're talking from a coastal area, probably not.
Yeah.
If I'm being honest. But I think collectively, they have some good network. I think once they form some conversation around that, I think they'll come to some possibly better options around getting better support and from the coastal areas. But I have talked to a few that head some of the committees, marae committees out on the coast and stuff. And they are in support. I don't know. I haven't individually spoken to any of them. I've also spoken to whānau. But yeah, I think they've got a big job ahead of them. When we look at this, I'm out of my head and it's different.
Councillor, is there something new or is?
Just for clarity, if basically what we voted for today, if you simplify it, is to spend about 600,000 to join it, which we can never get back even if we pull out on the stage 2. Are we not better if we can not spend that money and then later on let them design it and move in, and then we're going to have to spend that to join? I mean, can we spend it today, or do we wait till they've set up their committee and then join in 3 or 4 years' time, or 2027, or when we were going to join? If it's to it, then by then the financial modelling would be done. It'd be a better outcome, which would please Councillor Jeffries. That's just my thought.
Yeah, that is an option, councillor, and I guess staying in the tent, so to speak, means that we get to design, you know, a lot of things around it. I just had an email from the Chief Executive of Taupo District Council, so they obviously met today, not my date that I said in July. So they have agreed to come in as that stage 1 shareholder. So that's where they're at. I just thought I'd update you there.
Thanks, because they'll be having big decisions on that one. And we're talking about coming later, Thames Coromandel, that if they come in, there'll be quite a substantial entry fee, which will be decided by the collective of councils. Yes, that'll be considerably more than the figures you're talking about, would be my guess. Yeah. Another assumption, you're absolutely correct.
There is.
Yeah. Okay. Hey, thank you, everyone. Couple of things. One, thank you so much to staff, to Anne, for all the work that's gone into this. Has been absolutely massive. And to the councillors, thank you for your maturity you've shown around this decision, which either way it goes, because it is a huge decision. I think regardless of whether you're voting for or against, hold your head high for the decision that you made, because in your own mind, it's the right one. And that's all we can do, is make decisions based on the information that's in front of us. And as I said, it will be the toughest decision I'll make in local government. So with that in mind, I have the staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council A endorses the responses to submissions received on ODC's preferred option, Waikato Water Done Well, for the future delivery of water services as per its deliberations held on 10 June 2025, Referral Appendix 1. B, adopts as preferred option for inclusion in the Ōtorohanga District Council Water Service Delivery Plan. 1, becoming a Waikato Water Done Well Stage 1 shareholder for the delivery of water supply and wastewater services, noting this decision will take effect once the requisite documentation is signed. 2, transitioning to becoming a Stage 2 shareholder for the delivery of water supply and wastewater services in 27-28, and the proviso that the district is no worse off. Look, I think we could read that as many ways as we want, but it's in there. I'll leave it in there. Financially and operationally, under Waikato Water Done Well, than it would be under the enhanced status quo model. 3, continuing to deliver district stormwater services in-house in a manner that complies with legislative requirements. And C, notes that the water services delivery plan is subject to the approval of the Minister of Local Government. It must be submitted no later than 3 September 2025. I'd like to move the recommendation. Can I have a show of hands in support? Sorry? Oh, sorry, got ahead of myself. Can I have a seconder for the motion? Seconded, Councillor Williams. All in favour, please raise your hands. 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Against? Carried. Again, thanks everyone for the maturity that's shown here. Yeah, George and Amy, yeah, I probably figured they would, yes, yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Yeah, thank you. Let's just hope that this year works out favourable for everybody, because there's assumptions on everything. Okay. Anyway, we'll adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes, 10 minutes to get a breath. Cup of tea if you need. Thank you. Got to welcome back everybody. As Ross came and complained to me that we've had other staff that have jumped ahead of him thinking he's already left the building. So instead of item 252, we'll move on to item 253. Welcome, Vicky and Nadia. Oh, sorry, page 215. I just made that up. That's right, yep.
Good morning. We still have 5 minutes on. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thank you, Your Worship. This report is regarding 3 of our contestable funds, the Ōtorohanga Community Grants Fund and 2 externally funded grants, the Sport New Zealand Rural Travel Fund, which is for youth sports travel, and the Creative Community Scheme, which is known as the Art and from Creative New Zealand. The proposed amendments are recommendations from the Grants Committee from a workshop that was held a couple of weeks ago on the 10th of June. And these proposed changes aim to create a more inclusive and responsive grants framework and strike a balance between reducing barriers and increasing opportunity and maintaining accountability. So I'm happy to take the report as read and pass back to you.
Thank you, Nikki. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Dale and then Councillor Jeffries.
No, I just had one comment. It's cool to see the Kiwi logo stayed on the grants form, the district logo for that. So since Max was talking about logos earlier, so I wasn't going to bring it up, but I thought I would.
I was talking about the annual plan, but that's good. Good call.
Yeah.
Councillor Jeffries.
Pardon me, thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, just the one question, Nikki, on page 224, clause 7.2. I just wonder whether that clause, because it's mentioned in the body of the document, whether that clause should include a business as an umbrella organisation.
Yes, so the appendix document that you're seeing in front of yourself are the Community Grants Fund guidelines. They are the current guidelines as they stand now. So should they be approved by council, then that would be amended to reflect any changes and would include businesses if you would choose to adopt that.
Thank you, councillor. Any further questions? Again, good report and it makes absolute sense. Thank you.
Ditto, thank you.
Okay, so we have a staff recommendation in front of us, which I won't read out. I'll take it as read. Can I have a move and a seconder, please? Move Councillor Tamaki, second Councillor Dow. All in favour? Against? Carried. Okay, we'll move to item 252, page 184. You still here, Ross?
Thank you, Your Worship. Kia ora, councillors. Your Worship, thank you for those kind words earlier. I'd like to say it's been a pleasure and a privilege working here at Ōtorohanga District Council, and I will say that. So thank you. When Tanya gave me a call 5.5 years ago saying, please come and help with the 2021 LTP process, you'll only be here for maybe 2 or 3 months. I thought, no, this is good. And I think to me, the fact that I've been here for 5.5 years probably epitomizes why I've stayed in local government since 1983. So it reminds me, it does remind me of why I've been in local government for as long as I have. It's I think it gets in your blood, and for the most part, it's got me out of bed every day. For those 5.5 years. So thank you for the opportunity, particularly Tanya, it's been fantastic, working on, you know, a huge range of projects and things that I wouldn't probably have ever had the opportunity to work in. So some of the things we've been involved here together, I think are once in a kind of career type things, you know, notwithstanding the earlier item as a case in point. So so thank you. And then maybe I'll just segue onto the development and financial contributions policy. So this has been a little bit of a journey, and I'm pleased that we've got to this point, which is really I'm asking for your confirmation and adoption of a policy that's been developed having regard to our local context, and for the most part, it's continuing what the current policy put in place, you know, a number of years ago, and that's essentially retaining a reserves contribution, a financial contribution for reserves development that's currently in place, where the suggestion through the draft policy process was to keep that in place and use that money to support the ongoing development of our many reserves and some of those other key projects that I've had the privilege of being involved in. I think will be the beneficiaries of that contribution. And the other contribution is a development contribution for stormwater, only relating to that catchment area in the northern area here in Ōtorohanga Township. So no other contributions are mandated. There is, and I reminded, I think, council of the voluntary contribution to help promote affordable housing. So that's had a bit of a segue through this process, and hopefully that will come to fruition in terms of future development. So, Your Worship, I don't intend to say any other points. Perhaps I'll just note and acknowledge Councillor Jeffries identified a couple of, or one typo in the document. There's a table reference that was not correct. So aside from that, happy to take any questions that members may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Massively substantial document, and a fair bit of reading through there. Just out of curiosity on point 53, talking about credits in table 8, where did 2005 come up? Is there a significant period of time, 2005, or is it just a date you plucked from the year?
So I think 2005 is a reference point that this process, the development contributions, financial contributions, post policy process reference back to right from the start. So we've just carried that through.
Thank you. Councillor Dow.
Just Ross, I just noticed that, you know, it went out for submissions and nobody submitted, which is not unusual. It's not that, but did what's his name, Mr. Smith, you know, who's basically one of the biggest developers, and he's fully aware of it, or?
Yes, I made contact with him. I sent him a message, and if there were any queries that he might have about the proposed policy, to get in touch with me. So, so I reached out, but didn't hear anything back.
Yes. That's all right. Yeah, I don't know much about development. So, yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Thanks, Your Worship. Yeah, I did ask Ross a couple of quick questions, which he's replied to, and I thank you for that, Ross. And can I just add to the Mayor's comments that it's been great working with you, and you'll be missed. So
thank you.
Yeah. Yes, on page 205, I queried why a total capex project of 235,000 suddenly ended up at 355, and Ross has explained that to me. It's all to do with the way in which it's calculated with the number of housing units and blah blah blah. And it's not a simple calculation. Well, for some it might be, but for the man on the street looking at that, it does seem to be quite extreme. But So Ross did explain that to me, and if anyone else wants to know that answer, I'm sure Ross will supply it. And the only other one I had was on page 210. I think it was 210. Yeah, clause 109. And I just queried whether, I just asked Ross, how many times can council seek a contribution for the same development? And gave an example, if a DC was received, say 5 years ago, with the quantum calculated at that time, if for any reason development is delayed during the intervening period with the cost of development now exceeding the original cost, is the level of the original DC taken 5 years prior still appropriate? So it was a bit of a convoluted question, but Ross has responded to me on that one as well. I don't know, will you want to comment, Ross, on that? But
yeah. If I may wish it, perhaps the first one in relation to the quantum that was used to develop the stormwater development contribution. So that's the total cost of the capital. In this case, it was a 100% growth related project. And the term of the loan on that, I think, is 20 years. And that accounts for the 50% additional cost, in the same way as anyone with a mortgage will look at the principal and the interest component and combine them and maybe have a similar gasp that Councillor Jeffries had. And then of course we arrive at the figure by dividing it by the number of household unit equivalents. So that's the capacity that new piece of stormwater infrastructure will support. So, and then the second matter in relation to timing, there are critical points at which development or financial contributions can be levied and called in, and they are typically at the key decision-making points around development. So in many cases, it will be the point at which the subdivision is approved and the issue of titles can proceed. And that's when the reserve contribution, the reserve financial contribution will be levied. And then the other trigger point will be at building consent stage. And I think we discussed at the previous council meeting prior to your approval of the draft what the impact of the government's small household units, granny flats, and changes will be, given there's no requirement for resource consent or building consent if they're built in accordance with the relevant code. So we'll find another mechanism there, and that may be connection. There is a requirement for the developer of one of those units or any one of those units to notify council, but that's not necessarily a foolproof way of knowing that development has proceeded. But we'll figure that out too with the process as well, I'm sure.
Thanks for that, Ross. Councillor Prendergast.
Thank you, Your Worship. Ross, this is possibly another one for process, but the on page 201, the transferable development rights, is that quite a risk for council, or is it a normal thing that happens with developments?
So it's not untypical for transferable development rights to be considered as part of a consenting process. Tony may have some further information around that, but can you just reference the section or the clause numbers?
Oh, just above 76. It's just talking about transferable development rights, not exceeding maximum value. But I was really more just referring to the general understanding of how frequently they use. So page 201, right at the bottom.
I can't comment how often they use them. Can achieve that.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor, for the question. I think they're rare. They're typical in metropolitan and bigger councils, but for a small rural council, they're very rare. Even in the bigger councils, they're rare, and it's generally where there's, I guess, an established developer who's looking to maximise the occupancy of a particular site. And the council said, well, in order to enhance that or enable that, we're going to let you do some other development over here. So it's a bit of an agreement approach. We just thought it'd be good signalling in this development contribution policy as an incentive for potentially enabling affordable housing, if anyone wanted to take that opportunity up.
Thank you.
Councillor Tamaki.
Just clarity around that levy triggering that would apply to with Papakainga.
Sorry, what was just the first part of that?
How the levies are triggered when you do the contribution for build. That would also happen with Papakainga.
The reserve development financial contribution applies to the creation of new lots.
Oh,
So if there are no new lots created, because it's a single piece of whenua on which multiple dwellings are constructed. Yeah, and if that occurred outside, for example, the area that is covered by the stormwater development contribution, my take is that there wouldn't be any contributions required.
Of course, thank you.
And that would be the same for any existing lot. So if you like a lot that existed, in accordance with the policy previously is a credit.
Thank you, Ross. Any further questions, councillors? Yes, councillor Hughes.
No, I haven't got a question, but I'd just like to thank you, Ross, for the help that you've given us first-time councillors as come in this triennium, guiding us, especially through the town concept plan processes, and that it was a lot to get your head around, and you certainly made it very clear for us, and it was great. And I wish you all the best for your future in over in Australia. And I just probably the question I've got is, have you nominated any of these gentlemen behind you to carry on with the fine tradition of wearing a kilt to the thing? Because I think this needs to be kept up.
I thank you, councillor. I suspect they want to, but do they have the courage? That's that.
Thanks, councillor. Thanks, Ross. Hey, we have a staff recommendation that is that Ōtorohanga District Council, having followed the decision-making provisions of the Local Government Act 2002, including consulting on the draft development and financial contributions policy, adopt the Ōtorohanga District Council Development and Financial Contributions Policy, document number 828474, as presented, with effect from 1 July 2025. Move councillor Christensen, second councillor Hughes. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thanks, Ross. Moving on to Tony for the bylaw reviews, approval to consult, page 227.
I don't have the legs for it. My screen's just frozen, just bear with me. Password's incorrect. I've got it now. Good. So this should be quite a straightforward report. Hopefully there's a number of bylaws on our program which are up for review. So there's 3 that we are aware of this year and a couple next year potentially. So they're listed in the front there in the executive summary. So structures and works in public places, keeping in stock poultry and bees, and the stock movement bylaw. So today we're bringing the first 2 to you. The last one is still being finalised, so we'll bring a separate report through to that. I've set out the review and the consultation process in paragraph 2.4. And what we're asking for you or from you today is to approve the statement of proposal for the bylaws, the consultation document, the proposed amendments themselves. They're fairly straightforward amendments. It's really just a tickle up, bringing 2 of them up to speed. And then to approve the dates of consultation, any submissions bringing back, and then finalising. So that's pretty much the context of it. Happy to answer any questions.
thanks, Tony. You're saying there's a few amendments. My gosh, it's got a rewrite of the whole policy, wasn't it? It was huge. I was going through my quotable quotes. And I came with one yesterday, which is relevant to this. Bees don't waste their time explaining to flies why honey is better than shit. So, yeah, I've no questions. Councillor Prendergast.
Oh,
Your mic on, please, Councillor.
Mine was a comment too, much the same as his worships. We had a bit of a laugh about some of the details we learned about bee poo and flight cards and all that stuff. It was a little bit of light relief after the heavier papers that came.
And so, though, that was, so when I was at Waipa, we took a similar bylaw through, and we had to bring in some bee experts. I didn't know they existed around flight paths. So we got a university professor to come in. So this is all based on the Waipa one, and there's a lot of stuff that we learned around through that. So this is really best practice that we're adopting here.
Awesome. Think it's interesting because I was reading that. I was talking to my wife this morning about that as well. You actually don't think about bee poo, think about fly poo, but you know, anyway, moving on to Councillor Christensen and then Councillor Jeffries.
talking about poos.
I did laugh about the bee poo too, because my sister's house up in town is on a flight path, and one of her windows is consistently covered with little yellow spots. So yeah, I know about it. But my comments were going to be on the lighting. So we've got this bylaw about sufficient lighting under our verandas. Are we going to take into consideration that when the lines company put in smart meters, they actually disconnected a lot of our buildings lighting? That's why half of our lighting doesn't go down the main street, because it would be a huge cost. Yeah, so, and we've always had this bylaw, so we don't actually enforce it like bylaws. Like, let's be honest, bylaws, we don't enforce them all, you know. So I'm just wondering how that is going to feed in, or is it something the community board puts a submission in? I don't know. That's a question.
Yeah, I wasn't aware of that. That's, I think you're bringing that to my attention. So enforcement is something, thank you for raising that. So there's something probably worth bringing to your attention as well. So there's only a limited number of bylaws where we can actually put soft enforcement, which is infringements. That's where we give a fine to people. These ones don't fall into that category. So under the dog bylaw, we can infringe people. Under these ones, we can't infringe. We have to go straight to prosecution. And so councils have been asking government for a long time to put in some regulation to change that and make it easy for us to enforce bylaws. There is something on the cards that the government's talked about. We don't know what that involves yet. So in this instance, I wasn't even aware that was an issue, but it would probably be something through the community board. You may want to put a submission in. If you want us to follow up, we certainly can, but again, we have to go straight to prosecution.
Yeah.
And for something like this, we wouldn't do that. So it'll be a door.
Like, does council actually know how many lights don't go on the verandas downtown? I could give you a list.
Councillor Jeffries.
Thanks, Your Worship. Thanks, Tony, for an interesting report. I just found it interesting that bees are considered to be animals, but I suppose it's a bit hard to categorise them in any other way, I guess, but other than sort of insects or something. I'm a hobby beekeeper, and I've got 2 or 3 hives, but and my hives are actually registered as per the requirements. But I'm aware that in recent times we have had alerts from the National Centre that there is potentially some hives in our area that are infected with what they call American foul brood, or AFB. And so I guess the question really is, if we're going to have these the conditions about hives being registered, how do we actually enforce that? Because it means having to sort of, I don't know, go around and try and find them somehow, because I don't know where they are. Bee police. Yeah, bee police. Yeah.
So that sits with the MPI. So we don't have, councils have any involvement in enforcing registration. That was more an advice note that we thought would be prudent to put in the bylaw.
Yep.
So hobby beekeepers might not be aware of that, are aware of it.
Right. And I'll take the point about the flight path management. Yeah, that can be a bit of a pain. Yeah, and it does actually stick to things. If you've ever tried to get it off your car or anything like that, you almost need to use some sort of alcohol based. But no, it's a good report, and I just wanted to say thank you for the work you put into it. Thank you.
Thanks, councillor. Councillor Dow.
I'll tell you, yeah, it's just on page 246, 3.6, standing on verandas. It seemed quite clear to me, the old one, but it's got in red where the veranda has been specially designed and certified. So could that possibly mean everyone's going to have to get their verandas certified? So if they want to get up there to paint on them or something, or is that? I'm not just, I thought it was quite clear without the red add on, but you're only allowed up there for inspection, maintenance, or thing, or
Yeah, I guess it was just
kind of.
further clarification, and how this came about is on day 3, I think, of my job here. We had a veranda collapse down the road because the painters are on the roof and it hadn't been structurally certified for someone to stand on it. So that's why we thought it would be important to put this on. And it is a health and safety thing. So if we're administering, I guess, bylaws along the road, there is a potential liability risk for council too without having this in. So this puts the liability back on the building owner to ensure that the buildings are structurally sound for purpose.
Because wouldn't that get in the building consent, or no?
It should do, but this captures verandas which are not well documented in district plan as well. So there's a bit of an alignment, I suppose, between this, the Building Act, and the Resource Management Act as well.
So, so kind of what I'm reading is everyone would have to get their veranda certified.
If they want people on them,
They're going to have to get on them to maintain them. Yeah? Or could you put scaffolding under what they did in the end to paint the town? So basically, to paint the town now, everything's going to have to get certified. Which
So again, this is
that's what's a bit unclear to me.
Yeah, so there's probably ways around it if they wanted to prop it up, for example, put scaffolding on it. But this is a trigger for them to come to us and say, look, I don't know if I'm certified or not. Is there another way around it? And we we'd work with them on a pragmatic way around that.
Okay.
Thank you, councillor. No further questions. We have the staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council approve the statement of proposal, consultation document, proposed amendments to the bylaws as shown Appendix 1, Structures and Work in Club Places bylaw, Appendix 2, Keeping of Stock, Poultry and Bees bylaw, and B, approve the following dates: 1, Monday 30 June to Friday 8th August 2025, which is 30 working days, combined consultation for bylaw reviews. 2, Tuesday 26th of August 2025, ODC meeting, hearings, deliberations and decisions on bylaws. 3, Monday 8th of September 2025, public notice of the final bylaws. 4, Monday 15th September 2025, bylaws amended come into effect. Move councillor Jeffrey, second councillor Johnson. All in favour? Hence carried. Again, thanks Tony, that was a great report. Moving on to item 255, CoLab Constitution Proposed Amendments, page 276, Graham.
Yeah, thanks, Your Worship. So this report is in response to a letter from the CoLab Chief Executive to the shareholding councils to seek approval to amend the CoLab Constitution. So the amendment that they're seeking is to the tenure clause. So currently the tenure clause for board members, they can only serve 6 years. So they would like that removed. So that would just leave it that any board member can then be reappointed, which will enable the current board chair to carry on for a further term.
Thanks, Graham. Pretty self-explanatory there. Any questions, councillors? Councillor Jeffries?
Just one, Your Worship. Through you to Tony. Tony, I noticed that the board, there's no direct representation from Ōtorohanga Council. Is that something that you think needs to be addressed, or? You're quite.
For you, your worship, no. So we're represented by Ben Smith, who's the Waitoma District Council Chief Executive, and he always sends a pānui, an email out at the end of every board meeting, updating us on key decisions that have been made, asks us for any feedback that we might have to take to the board. So it was quite heavy with all the CEs there, and I think the stripped down version means that CoLab is more focused and agile and you know able to really get some kind of work done. Not saying that we held that up or anything, but yeah, I'm quite happy with the way it's working.
I would have had been difficult to sleep at night if I thought that you'd been left out for any reason.
Listen, thanks, Council. Okay, we have a staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council receives a letter from CoLab seeking approval to change the CoLab's constitution, and B, approves amendments of clause 13.6.1 of the CoLab constitution by deleting the wording for a further term but can serve only a maximum of 6 years consecutively, so that the clause reads 13.6.1 other than is set out under 13.6.2, all board terms of 3 years. Any board member may be reappointed. Move Councillor Prendergast, second Councillor Jeffries, all in favour? Against? Carried. Thanks, Graham. Moving on to another biggie, item 256, Ōtorohanga District Climate Change Response Plan, page 283, councillors. Welcome back, Ross.
Yes, thank you, Your Worship. This piece of work really reflects or follows on from the framework that between the Risk and Assurance Committee and Council was adopted last year. So essentially this is, and I think I reference it in my report, is a reference document bringing together what we currently know about climate change, its impacts, and starting to shine a light, I guess, on what those impacts might be or how those impacts may affect our district. In addition, there's a series of actions that have been drawn from other documents, from other decisions, from other areas of direction. So in my view, there is nothing new in that regard. It's simply a way of documenting what council, either directly as council or through the Risk and Assurance Committee, have already indicated are things or areas that should be progressed. And of course, a reasonable chunk of those are featured through the long-term plan. As one of my colleagues indicated recently, perhaps the document could benefit from a bit of a summary of actions table. And I think that's probably a good idea, because while the front part of the document is about setting the context, and I think that's important, it does take the reader a wee while to get to the, okay, so what does this mean for us and what are we doing as an organisation? So I think that would be a useful addition to the document.
Yeah, thanks, Ross. I agree. It would be a useful addition. It is helped by some great photos in there as well. So thank you. Any questions, councillors? That's quite straightforward then, wasn't it? The staff recommendation that Ōtorohanga District Council receives the Ōtorohanga District Climate Change Response Plan, a roadmap for action, June 2025. I'd like to move that. Second, Councillor Tamaki. All in favour? Against? Carried. That's great. Thank you.
Sure.
Moving on to item 257, Finance Report to 31 May 2025 on page 330. Brendan. Hey, Graham.
Thank you, Your Worship. Yes, so this is the financial report to the end of May. So just going through the statement of comprehensive revenue and expenses, first table. So as you can see, we've got a net surplus at the end of May of just over $1 million compared to a budgeted surplus of just under 60,000. Operating revenue is down on budget. There's some things that are up, obviously offset by some stuff that was down. The question was asked by Councillor Jeffries yesterday about the 621K in other income, what was making that up. So there is it's about 100,000 of building consents that are up on year-to-date budget. There's about 200,000 in resource consents. So we've done a bit of the timing on the budgets for resource consents is a bit all over the place because a lot of stuff gets accrued at year end. For those consents that are still ongoing, we haven't charged yet, but we have done a bit of catch up invoicing during the year as well. So they've made up part of that. And now I can't remember what else was there, but that's, yes, interest income. Thank you. You've got it in front of you anyway. Yes, and then a couple other slightly smaller items. In terms of the operating expenses, so we're down on budget by 1.3 million. Again, similar items as similar reasons as we've said throughout the whole year, particularly in the employee area. Other expenses, we've added a new table in. So this is the breakdown of the other expenses to show what makes it up, because other expenses are quite a broad category. The groupings in here are the ones that match what is in our annual report. In our notes to the financial statements in our annual report, we use these same categories. Some of these are required under legislation. For example, our audit fees, we're required to disclose those under the various legislations and accounting standards. Some of them are discretionary and we decide what we want to do ourselves. For example, the road maintenance and asset maintenance and stuff like that. So that's just gives you a bit more of a breakdown of that other expenses, so you can see what sort of makes it up. Within there is still another expenses, which is the highest one, but there becomes a point where breaking it down into multiple, you're getting down to tiny little amounts. It's probably not worth going down to that level of detail. Over the page, our financial position or a balance sheet. So we're actually showing a negative working capital as at the end of May, about $130,000. So a large reason for that's around the current liabilities. So we do have, you'll see the income in advance, 412,000, as I mentioned. So that's actually the money that we received many moons ago around the Three Waters reform, the original Three Waters, not the other stuff that we've just gone through. And so there was money that was to help with transition to that. And so we're still able to use that money with the new reforms for any transition costs. So there's some costs that we've incurred already, obviously we've just done and presented to you today, that haven't come off that yet. So currently they're just sitting in the sitting in a budget, and we've got a balance, and we need to take the money out of here and use that to fund it. So that will reduce that down, which will bring us back into a positive working capital, but a tiny positive working capital. So as we've talked about in 4.5, to resolve this, when we've renewed the loans that were due to be renewed last Friday before, we've taken an additional $2 million of borrowings to make that up. That is in line with what's in our long-term plan borrowings. So in our long-term plan, we're actually budgeting to borrow about $6 million this year, or 5.7 over and above what we had the previous year. We're going to end up about 3 over and above what we started the year. So we're actually better off than what our long-term plan said in terms of borrowings. In the combined cost of service statement, so again, under budget in our revenue, mostly because of the internal staff charging, and under budget in our expenditure, again, because of that staff charging not coming through, as well as just the timings. Some projects that obviously haven't happened, for example, around roading, as we talked about previously, we didn't get all the subsidy from NZTA, so there's projects that were budgeted that are not going to happen because we don't have that subsidy. The next page, the statement of cash flows. So as you can see there, there's all the money coming in and out. So as I just mentioned, we had a full year budget of 5.775 million of cash coming from borrowings. We're currently at 1 at the end of May and now up to 3 at the end of June, or almost the end of June. And then in terms of our capital expenditure, so the reason why No, sorry. Yeah, the capital expenditure's under budget as well because the budget does include some items of carryovers that had actually already previously been spent. And so it's only the cash that we've actually spent this year. And our debt profile, so that's where it was at the end of May, obviously. As I say, we've just borrowed 4 million in the 13th or 14th of June. And that came in at 3.9, so about what the current one was. That one we've put for a year long term, so that'll be till June next year. Part of that is June's a good time to have loans maturing because we either flush with cash because it's been a good year and so we can repay some right before the end of the year, or as was the case in this case, because of where things are sitting in terms of debtors and creditors, we didn't have the cash, so we can borrow some before we start getting the rates money in July, August. So it's a good time to sort of set loans to be repaid. And that's the end of the report. So happy to take any questions.
So just on that, Brendan, with the borrowing which you've had to do now, so you say that it's maturing in 12 months' time. Are we expecting that to be paid back fully in 12 months, or is it going to be rolled over?
Yeah, so with what's in the annual plan that you've just adopted, we're looking at reducing our external borrowings by about 3 million over 12 months. Yeah.
Awesome, Councillor Jeffries.
Just one question, the money that council's committed for the concept plans, or
yes,
the better off, is that in this current year's budget, or is that in the 25-26?
So there is an amount of 600 or 550,000 in each of the years for the first 3 years of the LTP.
For 3 years, yeah.
So there's that amount in each year.
In each year. So this budget here, the year-to-date budget would include, obviously,
yes,
some of that.
Yeah,
most of that.
And I will point out, I think I pointed out previously when it first came up, but the TCPs, even though we treat them as capital, so we loan fund them, they're actually budgeted as an operating expenditure, just the operating budget. That was because when we originally did the plans, the theory was we could capitalize them as an intangible asset because they're a long-term plan that tells council what we're going to do.
Yep.
Audit didn't agree with that. We couldn't quite get it over the line, so everything's now an operating point of view. But obviously, as we go through the process, some of the projects that we do, now that we're in the project sort of area, may be capital in nature, and then we'll capitalise those obviously and just expense capital.
No, that's good. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions, councillors? Thank you. Thank you, Brendan, for another good report. We have a staff recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council receive the report titled Financial Report for the month ending 31st May 2025, document number 828512, with Councillor Williams, second by Councillor Willison. All in favour? Against? Carried. Thank you.
And I guess I will just point out that there won't be a report next month because we don't do an end of June one, because obviously the annual report is the end of June. And if I bought you figures in July for the end of June, they will be completely different to what I believe that was in the annual report.
Okay.
So
Thank you for that.
just to put that out there.
Okay.
Sorry, just a question. When will we start reporting on the new financial year?
So the first report for the new financial year will be the end of July report. So
I'll be at
August
August.
meeting.
Okay, yep, couple.
Yep.
Thanks, Brendan. We'll move on to councillor updates, and we'll start with Councillor Johnson.
Attended the airport visit with the Mayor and Councillor Williams, and it was pretty interesting. Also, I've had a DLC hearing in Cambridge, just pre-field days, and attended the CEO review committee meeting also. That's my lot for the month.
Thank you, Your Worship. On the 28th of May, I attended the Elevate breakfast, which was really good, and I had a great guest speaker. So that was a really nice function. 9th of May, we had risk and assurance, and the 10th of May, the extraordinary meeting. That's it.
Thank you. Councillor Tanuki.
Kia ora, don't know when the dates were, but met with te whare o te Taihau Auru and te whare o Waiwai around the water stuff. Had a workshop at the grants and awards thing, which was really cool. Had the workshop for the sea, so that was really cool, but I haven't been that busy in terms of council meeting. Kia ora.
Got a Councillor Willison.
Kia ora. Kia ora tātou. Pleased to report, attended Ōtorohanga grant, hui, and also attended the seawall hui at Makati Marae between several agencies, and well done to Tony and Mark. Very informative, and yeah, albeit I had my mokopuna distracted me from most of that.
Kia ora, thank you. Councillor Williams.
Thank you. Apart from 16 days not here, and so not at the May meeting, just the obviously we'll Waikato Water Done Well work joint committee for civil defence on Monday, and the chief executive review work.
Thank you. Councillor Christensen.
Not really much. The grants, a little hurry, and community board. And I hope everyone's seen the beautiful lights down the main street that are up after first being passed in 2020. So, you know, it just goes to show how good things take time. And like, Annette, I was away for most of May. And I don't know if you read my little piece in the paper, like it wasn't really about Chelsea. For me, this trip was about visiting Somme and going around the cemeteries that I knew nothing about, because we talk about Gallipoli at Anzac Day, and we lost just as many soldiers in Somme. There's over 386 cemeteries along the front line, like where they fell, and most of those headstones are unknown only to God. Yeah, the German cemetery had 9,000 bodies in it. There's a 7,000 mass grave at the back. All the Commonwealth cemeteries, they're beautifully maintained with gardens on each side of the headstone. So obviously that really touched my heart. Yeah, that's me.
Thank you, Councillor. Even the police sergeant sent me a text commenting on the lights. And how much his kids enjoyed them as well going down Main Street, yeah. Councillor Dow.
Yeah, I haven't been up to much apart from reading all about waters. But anyway, there were the grants, and I've been to Australia for a couple of weeks for the last meeting. So it's interesting when you visited, like I was up in Tamworth because that's my son is, and you're in another country. Once you've been a councillor, you kind of look around at all kinds of things, and like there was a quite cool one of their parks. Aussie has a lot of nice parks, but one of them had like a sort of nice container building for their, you know, like it had a cafe in it, and it had like a veranda made out of containers. And it was really, you know, I should have taken photos, but yeah, so it's kind of yeah. Once you've been a councillor, you have a different lens on probably when you drive around, or you know. But yeah, that's about it, really. Cheers.
Yeah, absolutely correct. The roadside burn mowing is a big one, which I see when you go overseas. Hey, who mows and who doesn't? Councillor Hughes.
Excuse me. Thank you, Your Worship. So I had an email from Councillor Dow just prior to the regional transport. As I am the alternate, and Councillor Dow was in Australia, and unfortunately I couldn't make it either, because on that very same day we had the Risk and Committee meeting and also the Regional Community Board meeting in the afternoon. So the Regional Transport Committee meeting took a back seat to that, and then I attended the extraordinary meeting on the 10th as well. So, but other than that, it's quite.
Thank you. Councillor Jeffries.
Thank you, Worship. Yeah, pretty quiet month. 1st of June, I went to the Aotea Ratepayers annual general meeting, which was very, very well attended. And I've got minutes of that meeting if anyone would like to know what took place. 5th of June, the 5th of June was the Kapia Community Board meeting. 7th of June, we had a Better Places Together public day in the Kapia Hall, and I think that was pretty well attended. Ross, you're happy with the attendance we got that day? Yeah, and I think there seemed to be a lot of post-it notes around the place, and so no, it's really worth having those open days. 9th of June was the risk and assurance meeting. The 10th of June was a council workshop, and the 16th of June we had a housing committee meeting, which I attended by Zoom. So other than that, and just picking up on what Councillor Christensen was saying, we tend to forget just how many lives were lost in the Great War, but I think we tend to gloss over the fact that it wasn't just our guys that died, it was the other fellows as well, and that there were a whole lot of mothers and fathers and so on who never saw their sons come home either from the German side of things, so we tend to sort of forget that. But and the other point was that a lot of the guys that went to Gallipoli and survived that went onto the Western Front and got wiped out there. So, it was dreadful, really. Yeah. But anyway, thanks for sharing those thoughts, Katrina. I'm sure it was very enlightening for you. Yep.
Thank you, Councillor. Right, moving on to the resolution register, and hand over to you, Tanya.
Kia ora. So there are pages and pages of resolutions, so I'm really sorry about this. So the first one, C331, I'm just checking why we're recommending this be removed when it hasn't been completed yet. I'm sorry, I haven't had time to review this, so I'm doing this cold, and now I'm going to have to put some GMs and that on the spot. Ross, do you know? We should leave it on there until we've completed it on the 29th of July? Yes. Yes, okay. Okay, so first one, ignore, we're leaving it on there. C334, so that's the Local Water Dunwell Communications and Engagement Plan. Yep, we're recommending this be removed because we've completed that consultation. Rewa Schoolhouse, recommending that stays on until that process is concluded on the 31st of July. The annual plan confirmation of direction, C362, being removed, recommending because we've just adopted the annual plan. C363, draft development financial contributions policy, recommending that remains on the register until it's been adopted, which is today. Yep. So I think that was going to be adopted in July, wasn't it? Did we switch that one round with the other one? Yeah. So, yep, we can take that off. C374, Local Water Dunwell submission hearings, recommending that be removed because that is complete. C375, fees and charges, recommending it's being removed because we've just adopted those. Through the annual plan is C376, Tinihini Hinui Joint Management Agreement draft schedules, recommending this remains on the register because we haven't had the joint governance, co-governance committee meeting yet. C377, Māori Engagement Framework Implementation Plan, recommending it be removed because we're now underway with that, we've been adopted. C378, Korowai Council Mark Independent Evaluation Report and Improvement Plan, recommending that's being removed because we're underway with that. C379, advertising of temporary road closure Targa Rally, recommending that's being removed because we're advertising that. And C387, preferred model for delivery of water services, deliberations report, recommending that be removed because we knew you were going to make a decision on that today. So,
Thank you, Tanya. Councillor Jeffries.
Well, I was just really sorry, on number 1362, I just wanted to make sure that, pardon me, the down the bottom of page 340, items C through to G on the following page, by removing that resolution, we're not going to lose sight of those, are we?
that is a really good point, and I think they need to be folded into the next LTP process.
Yes.
And so someone in charge of the LTP process could capture them in a spreadsheet or something that's already probably been started for capturing things for the next LTP. But thank you for pointing that out, councillor Jeffries.
Thank you. If no questions, with staff recommendation that the Ōtorohanga District Council confirm the removal of C334, 362, 363, 374, 375, 377, 378, 379, and 387. Move councillor Johnson, second councillor Tamaki. All in favour? Against? Carried. Right, thank you, councillors. At the moment, we're going to adjourn for lunch, and then when we come back, we'll go into public excluded and do the public excluded part of the meeting. So I'd imagine half an hour.
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you, councillors.